Sam Acton, welcome to the Disenfranchised. How are you doing today?
Very well, Ed. Thank you very much for having me here. What a great welcome, and wow, it's good to be here with you.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your time with me. I really appreciate it, and I follow you quite a bit on Facebook and LinkedIn, and see you out on your boat a fair amount. So
Yeah,
it it was a quite nice week this week. So I'm hoping you've got a chance to get out and about. I'm just grateful I've managed to get you for an hour or so to have a chat. So yeah, have you been out recently on your boat?
yeah. I was out all weekend. I was out for 4 nights, and my husband made me come home Sunday evening. So yeah, I'm still here in my office, but I'm going to go again later on today or tomorrow. Yeah, it's where I am. I should be just like a sea gypsy of some description, really.
I was gonna say you need to get your office on the boat.
Oh yeah, I can. I've got full connectivity on board, which is why I can stay on there for so long. We did a month last year, and we're going to do a month this year, so I can process, do whatever, communicate. I can even do podcasts with you, Ed, from the boat. We'll do show number 2 from aboard, shall we?
Yeah, definitely. As long as I can go on the boat as well.
Great. Okay, let's do that. That's welcome.
Yeah, it sounds good. It sounds good. So, Samantha, we're going to sort of go into your what you're doing currently in a little while, but like I do with everybody on these podcasts, I'd love to find out what your first job is. Sorry, your
What
first job was.
my first job was. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Growing up in rural Dorset near the sea, in a we didn't have an industrial revolution down here, so everybody has to be self-employed or do their own thing. It was always very normal. You just go out and get a job. And actually, I got a little Saturday job when I was 14, I think it was. So you could do that back then, in a kitchen design studio. So I
Okay,
was
cool.
kitchen design. So it was a bit of selling, but I didn't even think about it as selling back then. So probably that might have officially been my first job.
All right. Okay. So kitchen design work then, that is that something you kind of fell into? Is that something that sort of piqued your interest?
No, I was just able to earn some money for a Saturday afternoon, so it fitted with my life, and I could get the bus there, and I could get the bus back again. And when I say bus, because of where we lived, it was a Cowtown special, so everything has to knit together quite carefully. It's only one a day each direction.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So,
But yeah,
was
it
that
wasn't a
after you?
specific subject of interest. It was just one of those things that happens when you're a kid. So I did that for a couple of years while I was doing, way back then, O levels. Yeah, yeah.
So, so was that during education, or were you halfway through GCSEs? What was when were you working?
Yeah, I did it during my O levels. So that was year 4 and 5 way back then. I think it's 10 and 11 now. And then I always kept some sort of job from there on in. I've always worked doing something, whether it be McDonald's. We got a McDonald's in our local town. It was very exciting back then. You learned loads about customer service and process when you work at McDonald's. That was quite kind of good, and you could do all sorts of shifts around A levels and pub work. If you can pour a pint, you'll always earn. So that's where that one came from. And as I finished A levels, I took a job in Norway, Stavanger, on an island
Oh
in a
wow,
fjord as an au pair. And I've
wow,
lived out there for a year. And I still know all the children and the family now, and I know their grandchildren. So
oh,
they
that's
come and stay
awesome.
with me on the boat, actually. So that was a big game changer in my life, being part of that family in Norway. And from there, I went to university in North London, where I got to have my part time jobs, including Arsenal Football Club at Highbury, which wasn't very far from where I was living at the time. And then, as I said, I've always worked, even when I'm studying, I've always worked, I've always had a job. I just, it's just part of me. I'm a grafter, I guess. I'm that kind of person. I'm very independent financially. So just just keep at it. And as I graduated, I took agency part-time work in the city and West End, which was amazing because I got to work at Goldman Sachs, Guinness Flight, Hanson, and really have a nose at some massive corporates. And quite frankly, I wasn't interested. It was really fun for the year I did it and moved around and tried lots of different things. But it was also the best thing that I managed to get a position back down in Dorset in financial services. Um, which got me back to my locality. Yeah, do you know, it's all worked out. It's great. I know so many people. It's ridiculous, and I've seen so many things. It's fantastic. You know, uh,
Yeah.
going
It-
in
it-
temping's good thing to do, to meet lots of different people and see lots of different companies and get a slice of this and a slice of that.
yes, that's fantastic. So did you ever at any point think um, that you'd like to find a career and that you wanted to stick to and settle down within, or were you quite happy at that point just to be out there trying different things and going to different places?
Well, I did. By taking the position in Dorset in financial services, I was stepping onto the career ladder. And it's not that I consciously thought, right, I'm going to have a career, I'm going to do 25 years and put money into a pension. That was never part of me. It's what you did. You graduated and you took a graduate position and you did the next steps. It was years down the line before I realized actually I was trying to make myself conform and fit with something that wasn't natural to me. That really, I'm just like every other member of my family and so many other people who were born and raised in my area. We're just naturally entrepreneurial. It's what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I've not thought about that before as location um, forcing you to almost be entrepreneurial. But now I think about a number of the franchise brands I've spoken to and people in the industry, quite a lot are from the southwest thinking about it. So they're quite on. Yeah, it shows there is that entrepreneurial spirit down there. Um,
Yeah, you have to adapt to make your own business in order to generate an income because there is not a factory on your doorstep. We didn't have that. We literally went from very impoverished farming situations and fishing situations to which were all entrepreneurial, and taking it up a level from there. So when I look back in my family, there's a lot of fishermen. There was Wainwright, so building wheels for carts. Um, One of my grandmothers owned the post office. I mean, she owned the building as well, for God's sake. That was great grandmother, actually. Um, there's lots of things like that uh, in the family. And whilst nobody would admit it, I'm sure there was a number of smugglers as well, because that's entrepreneurial and resourceful. But
yeah.
you never hear about people having been a foreman or a team leader or anything like that, because that's not part that was just never part of the world that we, our geography. It just wasn't there.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? I live down in the southeast, and what there seems to be a lot of around here is design agencies, digital agencies, and I think it's because it's a cheaper location to have an office, but still get into London fairly quickly. So the town I'm in, Ashford, is starting to boom with those sorts of businesses. And I mean, there's rumours that Netflix is coming to build a studio nearby us as well. So
Wow.
that then is the big factory. But I think as I look around the county, yeah, there's a lot of design agencies, a lot of marketing companies down over this way, and that's probably because of the location, right? Because we're kind of forced into just feeding into London most of the time because we're strangled by the M25 really down where we are. So
Yeah, so, yeah, absolutely. Location has a great bearing on how you decide to earn your money.
yeah, I've not thought about that before, so that's interesting. But one of the jobs you mentioned to me before we jumped into this recording was that you worked at my club Arsenal, and I'd love it if you could share that with everybody what you were doing there.
It's literally like you're a student. Need to earn some money so that you can supplement your income. And when I was at university, it was before student loans, so you had to work as well as study. There was no two ways about it. And one of the jobs I managed to secure was working at Highbury. at the Arsenal football ground, and I held the keys for the North Stand. So, bear in mind, I know so little about football. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's really rude that I had this amazing job. And all I had to do was arrive about 2 hours before kickoff, hang around the stand. And then when the police arrived, I went and stood in the little raised area in the stand with the police, watched the game, except I didn't really. I mean, Ed, it's shameful. I think I talked
I
through the
know.
whole thing every time because I didn't know what I was looking at. And I held a bunch of keys. That was my job, with my responsibility to hold this bunch of keys. And if there was a problem with the facilities, they just needed to be locked. Nobody ever cleaned them, fixed them. You just locked them. And even the police would escort me to lock them and then go back to the raised stand with them. And then, as the final whistle blew, the police would escort me down to the pitch, and I would walk around the pitch and leave the pitch with the football team, usually with Anders Limpar. So it's just that's what I did, and then I went home and I got paid really well for it.
See, I think I'd have made that my permanent job. I'd been quite happy with that. What? And one of my friends would be yeah, very jealous as well of that. Now they support a different football club, but they got a job as a steward, and they thought, okay, this is going to be fantastic. I'm going to be at all of the games. This is while they're at uni. They weren't allowed to face the pitch. They had to stare at the crowd the whole time.
Yeah,
So you definitely had the best job.
yeah. Steward sounds great. No.
Yeah, I just remember him saying to me, I was just gutted. I couldn't watch the game. But there we go. So, uh, okay, so where did your where did you kind of see your career going then after these kind of temporary jobs? You said you started to move into that kind of financial industry, and you were trying to shoehorn yourself into that. So, did you have like an epiphany moment where you went, "Aha, right, this is it. I know what I want to do now," or how did things progress from there?
Gosh, no, I have never had that moment. As I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I don't know if it's compulsory that we all get to have one of those, but
Well,
I,
I ask because I think for me personally, a lot of the times when I've been employed, I've always thought, "Ah, I just need that big idea. I just need to know what it is I want to do in my life, and then I'll be able to push all my effort towards it." But I kind of just never found that moment, right? I don't think you ever do. But yeah, what was it like for you?
no, well, it's really it's really intriguing what you say, Ed, given what I'm doing now, and I'm 20 years in on my business. Why did I never think about that? I think for me, I've just always worked, and so I worked. I worked in financial services, and when I was made redundant, I found another position and I worked. It never occurred to me to think differently, but I was really aware of the fact that I didn't fit. I was
Yeah,
really aware, and it did cause problems. I couldn't move forward as well as other people, um, because I saw things in such a different way. And there was nothing wrong with that. But essentially, you can't change yourself. You are who
yeah,
you are, aren't you? Yeah. And we need to bring out our strengths and do our very best in whatever we can. And what brought me to Domestic Angels was that our son, he was coming up to his first birthday. It was a few months before, and I'd gone back to work after maternity leave, and this was before the laws changed, so I had to go back full time. And I was based in on the Isle of Man and in Southampton, and it was all over the place. And this is not a really great way to function as a parent because you're not
no,
getting that time with the kid, and you're shattered, and I mean it's just carnage really. And I managed to get made redundant again, which you know it's quite easy to get on the list if you know how to work the system. And I came home and I had no idea what I was going to do. In fact, I hadn't even told my husband that I was being made redundant. I knew all about it, and I hadn't said a word because I was in a really dark place in coping with life. And I
yeah.
was just like, right, this has got to be resolved. This has got to be resolved. This has got to be resolved. So I think, it's like, Ed, if it meant I had to go and wash up in a kitchen and be a kitchen porter for the rest of my life to resolve that situation, I would do it. Honestly, I am a worker. It's what I do.
Yeah.
and I will make life happen. I will make things happy. So my friends all went into shock, and a number of them said, "Right, we need to go out for a walk," or "I'm getting the wine. We need to talk about this. What on earth are you doing?" That honestly, they were in total shock because I really had progressed so well in the ladder by then, and was doing all these. I was doing all these funky things, and I was doing them in different languages as well. And one of them said to me over wine one evening, she said, "Well, whilst you've got time on your hands, can you sort out a cleaner for me? Because I'm running a factory, I'm running a team, I've got 3 children, I've got this big house, and all of these kinds of things." I said, "Oh, yeah, all right, then I'll do that. I'll find you a cleaner. I can sort that one out." And after the second bottle of wine, we came up with the name Domestic Angels. And essentially, everything else is history. That's where it came from. And I just went with it because I just do. I get on with things, Ed. I don't think too hard. I've never thought too hard about stuff. I just get on with it. And I'm grateful for the life that I've got. And yeah. Oh my goodness, I'm going to be thinking about this a lot.
But
So,
yeah,
yeah.
but it's interesting because I don't think everyone has that luxury, right? Just to get up and get going, and just that's their natural instinct. I think some people there's that element of fear, right? Of what ifs, and try and take the safe route, stick to what you know, and things like that. So there's a certain amount of bravery in what you're doing there, but I think also that's really great of your friends to sort of come around you and say, right, let's sort something out with you. And they didn't try and push you back into that old career. Instead, what they did is they helped you to come up with a different solution, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And they are still awesome today. They are all still part of my life. Yeah, it is what happens when you've got good friends around you. That they will give you 100% support and not be afraid for you. Um, yeah. So are we dealing with our own fears or somebody else's fears in those scenarios? Who's the limitation creator? Is it ourselves or is it coming from somewhere else? Is it our obsession with the perceptions of others that is limiting us? Or is it preconceived ideas? Where does it come from? Do you know, I think my mum in particular never told me that I couldn't do things. She didn't create those limitations with me. I could do what I liked, and I did, and I still do.
So that again is kind of that's really interesting to me because I was the same. My mum just kind of let me get on with whatever I wanted to do. And so I ended up, putting up marquees for 8 years because I enjoyed going playing football, drinking with my friends, and doing that kind of stuff. And then I had a moment where I realised that I needed to grow up, and that's when I found recruitment and things went on from there. But I never at any point kind of felt like it fit in at all. If you see what I mean, I never had a direction that I was particularly heading in. It's a lot more different today. I've kind of had a chat with myself and kind of gone through. I've done the friends intervention, but to myself, I sat down a few years ago and sort of figured it out. But I'm sure there's loads of other people out there that are in that similar situation where they're out there doing whatever they want, but there's no direction to it. So it's yeah,
Yeah, okay. I see what you mean, and often there is the topic of discussion around about don't be afraid, take the step. It's a big step going into your own business and everything. And I never had that fear. It was the most natural thing for me. And do you know what? I hurt repeatedly, especially during the first 5 years, because I'd now learned a lot of lessons. It's about recruitment and employing your own team. When you're the employer, oh, it's a whole different story.
yeah,
Um, and there's painful moments, but you learn, you grow, you move on. And I'd say now, finally, and I'd even give credit to the pandemic in the last 2 years for helping get to that final point. I feel like I'm really in flow with myself and my business. There's no element of it that's a chore. It's so interesting and it's not draining, it's not exhausting, it's not a fight.
yeah, that's cool.
it's just natural. It's symbiotic.
Ah, awesome. I'm going to come back to the pandemic and what that did to the business. But before we do, can you tell me a little bit about Domestic Angels and what the business started out doing, what that looked like, and then kind of and how it's built up over the years?
Oh, well, after the discussion with my friend and the two bottles of wine and the invention of Domestic Angels, I put a little advert in the local newspaper on the 11th of April, 2002, uh, to
It's
advertise
about
for.
20 years ago now.
It is, it's 20 years ago now, actually, and we haven't celebrated it yet. So
Congratulations! Yeah.
it's something I need to do something about, actually. Um, yeah, I put the advert in the newspaper. I went to the same friend's office to borrow her photocopier so that I could just make a few application forms and things like that. And at 10 past 11 on the 11th of April 2002, the phone rang, and it was a lady called Tina, and Tina was our first cleaner. It's good, isn't it? You won't forget that. And Tina stayed
Yeah.
for 8, 9 years, I think it was, and she got involved in the office and administration. So I learned a lot from Tina because she was very much in the industry. Yeah, and then basically I employed staff, and yeah, they came and went, and some stayed longer than others. A couple are still with me 20 years on,
Wow.
so that's lovely. So big up out there to the lovely Janet, who has been around for 20 years. I mean, Christ, what's that all about? That's amazing, and she really is excellent. Um, and yeah, just sort of kept going and growing. A very simple business, and I still have the accounts books today. There, because I did them in pencil on paper. Because way back then, that's what we did, Ed.
Yeah.
That's when you were at school.
What's that?
And
Pencil and no, no,
I
I don't recognise it.
I know, I know. I didn't even know how to do a spreadsheet back then. And I went to HMRC and I learned how to run the wage roll on really large bits of paper with a pencil and a rubber. Um, and I learned it all myself. I didn't ever put anything out until I was way down the line and I had the funds in. And I actually, it's a really top tip for people who are starting their own business, because you get surrounded by loads of sharks saying, "Oh, I'll do this for you and do that for you." Well, that's great, except you haven't got a turnover yet and you haven't got a profit to pay for it. So don't do it. But apart from that, if you do it yourself, you do the wage roll yourself, even if it's not your natural territory, when you do hand it out, you will spot a mistake at 10 paces, and it really will stand you in good stead. And so that's what I did. And I just kept building and kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I had a couple of like senior angels, because all our cleaners are called angels because they are. And in 2013, we were made National Home Based Business of the Year. And it's like, where did that come from? And what's that all about? And it was that point that I realized actually I had a
Yeah.
business and I was a business owner. All the time up until then, I hadn't thought about that. What I was doing is I was working, Ed. I was doing what Sam does. I work and I make that money come through the door one way or another. And I make time to be with our sons. I could cycle to school and back. I could be at all the rugby matches. I could do all the swimming lessons. You know, it was never a problem. I could do the whole thing. I really did have my cake and eat it. But then when I realized I actually had a business, I thought, oh, well, maybe actually I should be getting some help here then. And I managed to get part of something called Dorman, which is the Dorset mentoring service. I think these
Okay.
exist all over the country, but ours is called Dorman. And I was put together with a chap called Martin Spooner. Now, you literally pay a token amount of £100 a year. That's it. Or well, you did back then. It's probably 200 now. And I still know Martin today. He happens to have a boat as well. And Martin came in, and he's got a fancy MBA, and knows how to do all the numbers and say really clever things that I'd never heard of before. And he analysed everything and then said, well, it's all very well. You can keep growing the way you're going, which was sort of like this. So it's me at the top, and then layers, and then the customers. But you're getting further away from the customer base. So what you're passionate about, which is making sure the customers are taken care of and feel personal and that they are the only customer, is going to get watered down. So what you could do is grow by multiplying, by franchising.
Okay.
And I said, oh, That's the F word. Don't say that to me. I'd gone to a franchising exhibition in 2005 in London. I thought it was the most horrendous experience on the planet. It was an ocean full of sharks all going, let me sell you something. Let me sell. In fact, I'm going to sell you an empty shoebox. And you're going to really love this shoebox and make your millions, Rodney. It's like, oh my God, it was just dire, Ed. It's
I can
absolutely
imagine.
dire. So bless him. He spent. I mean, this was over the space of a couple of years. He was worked so hard to convince me that actually franchising was a good way to go, and that we could do franchising in the spirit of Domestic Angels. So with our ethos, our moral framework, with Sam's approach to work, with the way I feel about the world, which is if I'm in it for time and money, so should everybody else be. So all of the staff, all of the customers, and anybody connected to us, it's for the same reason, and we have to keep that purpose central. And it's not about banging the drum and making everybody jump higher and higher. It's got a different reasoning behind it because there's so many parents out there who want to be able to have their own business and have their own time and have their own. Yeah. Anyway, going down another avenue there. Um, and then somehow I became, I can't remember exactly how, actually, I'd have to look it up, became the live client for the Bournemouth University MBA cohort.
Okay.
Get that
Yeah.
one. So I spent a year working with these people who've got the most enormous brains. Now, they do know lots of words and things that I've never heard of in my life. And I have seen those words again since because I got involved with them again. But they analysed not only the business, but they looked at the overall industry of cleaning and they analysed the franchise sector in so much depth, it's unreal. In fact, you can see I've got a filing cabinet behind
Yeah.
me. That whole top drawer is full of MBA
Oh
reports
wow.
and MBA stuff that came out of it. It's absolutely fascinating. So that was in 2015, I think it was. And it was the most amazing experience. And at the end of the year, they did all these presentations about how domestic angels should move forward. And then they all, without shadow of a doubt, recommended franchising, but in a particular way and with certain priorities in place and purposes in place. And they, bless them, they turned it into traffic lights for
Oh
me
wow.
so that I knew where the danger zones were and I could make it easy for myself to understand and where the risks were and it's like, right, okay, let's do this. From my financial services background, I have a really good skill set in process definition that I'd learnt with the teams at KPMG, who often sat in with us. And so I just started defining all of the processes. And out of that, I was able to create all the process definition for our own in house software
Okay.
to run the business. So it's Smart Diary. It's called Halo in house. It's known as Paxan to everybody else, but it's Halo in house. And basically, you go in there and you go, I'm going to book Angel Janet in with Mrs. Jones on Monday at 10 o'clock, and it's going to be on repeat. And it goes in, and it just goes on repeat. But it also repeatedly is talking to Zero accountancy
Yeah.
software that generates the invoicing. So the franchisees don't have to touch invoicing at all. It's just done automatically for them. There's no issue there.
Oh,
So
that sounds magical,
yeah,
to be honest.
yeah, it is. Well, one of the things that came out from the MBA cohort and their research is that franchisees get really annoyed about the fact that they are bought into a franchise, but then still end up doing all of the stuff that they don't want to do. They could have done if they had a blank piece of paper. And the big thing that they hate doing is the accountancy, the bookkeeping. So we just took it away and made it automatic and central. So yeah, we worked on that, developed that, and started writing the manual so that everybody could run their own business. And in 2017, we found our first franchisee, and so yeah, we then manoeuvred over as to being Domestic Angels franchising. And here we are 5 years later. How did that happen?
I think it is really interesting that at the beginning there, when you were talking about you just learning all these different things like payroll and all these other aspects to business. I'm not sure everyone wants to do that or even expects that when they're setting up their own company. For me, I didn't realize it could be so complicated and so much of a bore for me. I don't enjoy doing it at all. So that I think is pretty amazing that you just kind of just took that in your stride and got on with it. But I love that now you've created that solution for the franchisees that are joining your network because yeah, I guess I probably would have expected some of those elements to be taken taken care of for me, so that I don't have to do that, so I can focus in on the main goals. That's pretty cool for your franchisees that they've got that. But what kind of impact? I wanted to ask about the franchising side. What kind of an impact has that had on your business? Has that allowed you to be closer to your clients, or has it thrown up different challenges for you?
Oh, yes, very different actually, Ed. So no, I am not closer to the paying client, but the franchisees are.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
there are more clients today than there ever was, but they still feel like they are the only client, and that's the important result because the franchisees are able to give them that time and that dedication and the customer service. So yeah, that was a big tick in the box. In terms of change for me, my customers are the franchisees.
Yeah.
So that's who I talk to and who I have to take care of and make sure things are working smoothly. And yeah, during this winter, actually, I took some of the what might be perceived as basic business functions back in house, well, back in onto my desk, so that I could just dive back into them deep and see if they still tick boxes for me, if they could be any better. And that's not necessarily because I'm the expert, but I can be the expert. And I can have a really good go and I can ask experts questions and say, do you know what? Why can't this do something differently? Or can this be better? Or can this evolve? Are we missing tricks? And, everybody's very helpful and generous with their time and happy to join in that game of investigation and creation because for me it is really really creative.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, that's the fun stuff. Definitely not the stuff you have to do for me, like sending invoices and chasing up payments and all that kind of stuff.
uh, yeah, okay, but
That's the bit for me that I don't want to be in business for necessarily. It's the creation and setting things up. That's the fun stuff, I think, for
oh,
most people, isn't it?
yes, yes, getting the clients, that ticks a big box, doesn't it? That makes you feel good. It's like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm going to make them happy. And yes, they're happy. And yes, you send out an invoice, but it's only going to really make you happy if you get that money coming back in, Ed. So we need to have a little talk on the side about dealing with that one, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. But okay, so we mentioned the pandemic a moment ago. So um yeah, what did that do to your business? Because obviously everybody's at home a lot more. There's more people that are on furlough, so they've got time to perhaps clean their own houses, and yeah, I guess it would have had a bit of an impact on your business.
It had a massive impact, absolutely massive impact. I mean, it slapped the business big style, really, really did, because we couldn't go into people's houses because the law stopped us from doing so. However, we could look after vulnerable people. And
Okay.
that became a problem because then we couldn't furlough all of the stuff, or the franchisees couldn't furlough all of their stuff because we still needed one or two to be able to go in. However, at the beginning of the pandemic, there wasn't partial furlough. It was either 100% or nothing. So, yeah, we worked together with lawyers who liaised with the Treasury for us so that we could overcome that because that was going to put us in a really vulnerable situation. And also, and we could not bring ourselves to let those vulnerable people down, really really couldn't. Some of them genuinely would never see anybody else, and it's no good saying, oh well, the local council volunteers would be on the doorstep. These people have no contact, they can't make the phone calls, they've maybe got dementia or some other situation going on, and they won't even let their family in a number of cases, because that's what dementia does to people, or that's what their illness does. So we had to be really determined and do the right thing. Say, okay, this is
Yeah.
what the law is saying, but we're going to do the right thing and we'll tackle the law bit afterwards, because this is all being made up now on the spot anyway. So just as the government were making it up, it was like, well, yeah, okay, we get the context of what you're talking about, we get the spirit of what you're talking about, and if you had the chance to speak to individual businesses, you would agree with us. So let's just get on with it and then stick the legal stuff in behind and overcome that situation. It also meant dealing with HMRC, because it could appear that our franchise territories were merging for tax purposes, and they weren't. What we were doing was combining to be able to look after these very, very vulnerable people who would be in a very bad situation in our society. So yeah, we had to deal with that. That was hard. And for me personally, that first lockdown, I think it was about 3 months long, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
I worked stupid hours, absolutely stupid hours. I was doing a clear 6.5 days a week. And my days, when I get into days, I like to be at my desk for 6:30 in the morning. Just off I go, and I'll go and go and go and go until I drop, basically. And I just kept at it and at it and at it. And I was looking ahead of the game, going, well, when we come out of this, what we're going to need? Okay, we're going to need new health and safety. We're going to need new communications to customers. How do we go back into people's houses? So you're visioning before you're told. At some
Yeah.
point, we're going to be told we can go back in. So when we go back in, how are we going to look after the angels? How are we going to look after the clients? How do you make this role? How does it feel for the franchisees? And during that time, how do you take care of the franchisees who are going, oh, my business has been ripped away from me? Yeah. So we got counsellors involved and guest speakers to buoy them up and make them feel good about themselves and that they're not alone. And then I worked on all those processes and documentation in the background. And then at the same time, crunching the numbers. Oh my God, it was endless, 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 endless. So one of my office people, my office manager at the time, I furloughed her so that financially we could get through in the core business. And she's got small children, so it made sense. She
Yeah.
needed that more than I did. Um, so she was doing that, and so as we came out of that first lockdown and started to emerge, she gave me a call. She said, "Look, I really am bored now." She said, and you're clearly shattered. How about we do something? I said, "Oh, all right then. Well, how about we go like job share?" Because she knew how to run the whole business, and because I'd done all of the work for it to relaunch, she didn't need to do anything on the innovation front. It was just run the business. And she said, all right then, we'll do 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. I said, fine, okay, that works for me. And so she picked up the reins, and honestly, Ed, I went to sleep and I slept and slept and slept. And I think it was day 10. I thought, my goodness, I feel different. And I started to get creative again in my
Yeah.
mind about the business, about what we can do and what was happening in the economy, because you could sense that there's a shift in the way people were reacting to the world and the community. And people were shifting their decision making to value based, value driven, and away from price driven. I was like, well, okay, where are we going to go with that? So I started to have the seeds of this creative thought that I really enjoy. And I mean that came actually down the line, and I gave her a call to say, how are you getting on? She said, oh, I'm having a brilliant time. I said, well, funny enough, so am I. And she said, well, let's not change. So I stayed on furlough and she stayed working, and I've had a few months off.
Lovely.
I had a few months on furlough where I could just sort of recover, feel better about the world again, and get these creative juices going and looking at, well, this is going to be a substantial change, and at some point we're going to come out of this and things will not go back to what is was once normal, not that definition. It's going to be a new definition. And what's that definition going to be? How's it going to feel? And how do I want to be within that? And how does the business want to be in that? How do the franchisees want to be in that? Do we even want the franchise? You know, it's all of those questions. So I was able to take that time out to really recover, think, and do what all of us as business leaders should do, actually, is allow ourselves to be creative and have fun with it all, and then come back to it. So
Uh,
yeah, it was really, really interesting.
yeah, I think it's a lot of the business owners that I speak to say about taking a break, taking a step away, and trying to allow those creative juices to flow, so to speak. Sitting here as somebody who's just starting a business, it feels very difficult to sort of allow yourself time to do that, because you think, like, Sam from 20 years ago, I just need to keep working, 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 do,
Guinness
do
Book.
stuff all the time. Yeah, because you haven't got any cash flow at the start, right? There's nothing, so you feel like you have to keep on going every step of the way. But
Yeah,
um, I
yeah,
do find that if I go for a walk, allow myself an hour at lunch or something like that, actually a better idea comes along. And yeah, it's just difficult, isn't it, to try and find that balance. So I think you're quite lucky to have had somebody there who was very capable and able to take over. But one
totally.
other thing I wanted to touch on there, but that you said there, that people generally started to consider more about the value rather than the price. I also think people started to think about their time a lot more as well, right? Like, is this the best use of my time?
Yeah,
Commuting to and from work is one thing, of course.
yeah,
And I know for me personally, and my wife, who was training to be a teacher, we were looking at it as, would we rather spend on a cleaner? This is for us, and we haven't got a massive house. We're a semi-detached kind of. Well, it's actually end of terrace house that we've got. 3-bedroom place, so it's not huge by any means. But we thought, actually, if we can get a cleaner, 15, I think it's £15 a week, something like that. We're paying. Or is it £15 an hour? I can't remember. Whatever it is, anyway. Is it? Is it? We If we then spend that time that we spend cleaning, actually, doing the education piece in the evening for my wife, me setting up my business, editing podcasts and all that good stuff as well, instead of cleaning, is that time better spent for us? So then we can then have our whole weekends with the kids and do stuff like that. And we sat down and we went, yeah, we've saved up a little bit from not commuting all the time. We've got a little bit of cash, so yeah, let's just do it. And it's been great. Really, really, really enjoyed it. And I guess that you're seeing in your business now, there's probably more of a demand for
yeah.
cleaners right
And you're
now.
far from
Is
the
that
only
right?
ones to do that.
Awesome. So I'm going to move on to my usual 3 questions now that I ask people at the end, and the first one is my favourite, and I'm hoping, and I'm confident there's going to be a good story here. Is what weird, strange, or interesting stories have you got from your career?
My career or my business?
Both, however you want to look at it. It's from your working life, I guess, or any funny stories as well.
Oh my God. I got to be really careful here, Ed, because we work in people's homes and we have confidentiality. Oh, but then I need to do it without using names. Oh, goodness gracious. I don't I don't know the answer to that one, Ed, because do you know, we do life
Yeah.
in domestic angels. We do humans. So something happens every single day. Yesterday morning, one of the first calls that came in was one of our older clients actually just had his 100th birthday, had died. And it's really normal for us to go through these or be with a person when they die, or we've been with families when there's been stillbirths. Um, and we're the first people to find out about weddings and bridesmaid material, because you can tell us because you can't tell anybody else, and all these things. So we're really, really privileged in that we do humans, and we know so much about what's going on in people's lives. And I'm trying to think of a really funny story. I know so many, but it would be terribly tragic if they worked out it was them I was talking about. And some of them are very rude. It often involves some things that we shouldn't talk about in public, Ed.
No, that's fine. I think it's interesting what you're saying there, though. Like, because you I guess you're being invited into somebody's homes, into their families, and and yeah, there's not many professions where you do that. People keep their private lives a little bit separate, but you're getting to see
I'm
under the covers, so to speak.
Oh, literally,
Yeah, yeah,
literally,
I can imagine.
literally. And there's several stories in sort of in that context, and I'm sure the book would be an incredible global bestseller. It's just hilarious.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Well, let's move on before we offend anyone or upset someone, or it gets too risky. So, um, that my next question is, what's been your proudest or most inspiring moment?
My son,
Awesome. And how old's he now?
he's 21 and he's doing his finals in yacht design and production, which was his dream. And the dissertation's due in this week, and apparently I'm reading it. That will be interesting. I won't know what it's about. And so the decision that I made to walk away from financial services and create Domestic Angels so that I could be the best parent I could possibly be has worked. It's paid off.
Oh, awesome. That's really cool. That's really good. And maybe he's going to design and build you a yacht one day. Is that the plan?
Well, I haven't heard that it's part of the plan, but it wouldn't surprise me. No, he wants to. He's going to be a professional sailor, and he's going to race around the world.
Oh, awesome. That'd be really cool. Oh,
Yeah,
fantastic. Well, that's a really nice one, and really important, I think, because it sounds like he would have been one when you started the business, so must have been at the forefront of your mind at that point in time. Is that you've got to create something that's going to help the future for your child, and yeah, I kind of feel the same with my kids. They're a bit older since I've started this business, like 5 and 7. But that's a big part of it. I want something for them to have in the future, so to allow them to follow their dreams and have a good start in maybe setting up their own business, buying a franchise, whatever it may be. But or the education side of things. So I think that's awesome that you've managed to achieve that, and yeah, you should be proud. It's good.
well, it goes back round to the big topic that we talked about right up front, which is how come I did this and I just worked and worked and worked at it. Well, why? Because my husband and I wanted to provide the best life we could for our son and support him in the best way we knew how, which was by giving him time and love.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. It's great, and I think anybody who's trying to make a change in their career, whether it's to another job, to self-employment, to franchising, whatever it may be, I think the most important thing is to understand your why and understand your core values as well. That when I said to you before about talking to myself, having a good chat with myself, that's what I did. I sat there and wrote down everything and just kind of went, this is what I like doing, this is what I'm good at doing, this is what I hate doing, this is what I don't want to do, but also, why do I want to build a business? Why do I actually want to take myself out of that nice, safe comfort zone of employment where I could find, I was always confident I could find a job anywhere doing something, but why take myself out of that comfort zone? And yeah, a lot of it's to do with kids, but some of it's to do with being able to travel to more places that I want to travel to, and make the
Yeah, that
make the use of my time.
yeah, and which will come down the line.
Yeah,
That will come down the line. Yeah, and there's an interesting situation at the moment where my personal why has changed because son's standing on his own 2 feet. So it's like, okay, replacement therapy. That's why I've got the yacht.
that's now your baby. Yeah. Excellent. Well, it's been really good kind of listening to your stories and your career and how you built the business to where it is today. But we obviously touched on franchising for a little while, so and starting your own business. So my final question is around that really. And if you're standing in front of somebody who's potentially about to buy a franchise, whether that's yours or any others, what's the most important? What's the one piece of advice you would give to them?
Does it feel right?
Yeah.
Does it feel right? You can write down all of the numbers, you can look at all of the processes and all those things, but if it doesn't feel right, it's not the right thing because you need to be able to have a successful relationship with the franchisor. So Ed, if you wanted to come into Domestic Angels, you need to think, yeah, I can talk to Sam, I can talk with Sam, and I know that Sam is going to make sure that the best comes out of me and that this goes well. Then you're going to be looking at, are all the structures in place, and are the structures and processes in place that tick boxes for me? So no bookkeeping, tick. um, and can you see yourself in that role? Can you see yourself as a successful franchisee within that role? Do you identify with the other franchisees? Does it sort of make sense? Like, yeah, I belong to that tribe. I could be part of that tribe. I identify with them. It makes sense. Go about it in a very, very human way. You can read all the books you like, but if it doesn't feel right, it's not right.
Yeah, I agree. I perhaps naively a few years ago thought it was always all about the logos, right, and the brand, and how well known is it, and things like that. Which in some industries and some businesses, I think, is very important. But actually, it's the people behind it, and can you work with them? Because any problem that you face, you can be overcome if you've got the right people around you. And I think that wraps it up and ties it up nicely with in your career, when you
Yeah.
started Domestic Angels, but also during the pandemic. So it's yeah, I think that's really good advice. So thank you for that. And Samantha and Sam, I nearly called you Samantha then because it's written down there. But and Sam, thank you very much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.